Hey everybody, today I'm sharing my running history, and whether you're a new runner or have years of experience, whether you're young or whether you're a more mature runner, I think there's a lot to learn from my victories and my defeats and everything in between, so let's go. My running history begins in the autumn of 1983. In ninth grade, a friend and I joined the high school cross-country team, and we started training towards a 5K for the regionals in Toronto. I believe I finished a lackluster 21st place. I do not remember my time. Unfortunately, I think that's lost forever. But when that race was over, I was done running. In the summer of 1999, I commuted daily to work and to school by bicycle. And I decided that I was going to supplement my fitness with some running. So 3 times a week, I'd go out and run loops around the local park, no more than 2 miles a day, I think, 3 times a week. But again, life got busy and I dropped running again. By the spring of 2010, I was 40 years old and 40 pounds overweight. My doctor recommended pills to handle my borderline high blood pressure and prediabetes. But I knew on the spot I really didn't want anything to do with that. I committed myself to getting the weight off through exercise and much better eating habits. I joined a lunchtime walking group where I worked. By the spring of 2011, I dropped 30 pounds. And one day, leaving my office, I wondered to myself if I could cover the third of a mile distance to my car if I ran it. So wearing business casuals, wingtip shoes, and a computer bag over my shoulder, I ran the distance, and I was really pleasantly surprised to find that I was only mildly winded when I got there. It occurred to me that I could probably get the rest of my weight off a lot faster if I ran instead of walked, but the idea of fumbling through my neighborhood for everyone to see, looking like a middle-aged track star wannabe, didn't really appeal to me at the time. I really didn't have the confidence yet. But my luck changed in the summer of 2011 when one of my wife's friends put her treadmill up for sale. I rented a truck, went to her house, loaded it up, dragged it through our front door, and set it up in our living room. At first, I only used it about twice a week for maybe 20 minutes per session. It's really all I could take. The monotony was just mind-numbing to me. But over the next couple of years, I managed to get up to 6 to 7 miles a day, running as much as 6 times a week. I increased my speed by about 1/10 of a mile per hour per week until I found I could sustain speeds over 8 miles per hour for an entire run. As my confidence grew as a runner, I began mixing in runs outdoors as well. By May of 2014, I decided that I was going to actually sign up for a race. I found a half marathon online, just 7 miles from my house in the next town over. I knew I had 4 months to get ready, and my longest run at that point was about 10 miles, so I knew I had to get with it if I was going to be ready in time. 2 weeks prior to the race, I ran my first 14-miler on the treadmill. I knew I had my work cut out for me if I was going to reach the goal that I'd set for myself. I really wanted to run a sub 90 for my first half marathon. On September 20th, 2014, before towing the start line, I did walk up to the pacers for the 90-minute time, and I told them, hey guys, I'm going to sprint out in front of you and I hope never to see you again. I knew that I was going to have to really give it my all because, as it turns out, this is a very hilly out and back course. So I took off. I stayed ahead of them the whole way. And as it turns out, I won the Masters Division for that race. I picked up a $50 check for doing so, and my final time was 1 hour, 28 minutes, and 37 seconds. I was incredibly proud of that result. I still am. I knew almost immediately that I wanted to move on to the full marathon distance. I took a look online and found out that the Charlotte Marathon was taking place a mere 6 weeks later. So I went into training immediately for that race. Each weekend, I increased my long runs by 2 miles, going from 16 to 18 to 20, all the way to 22. And 2 weeks prior to the race, I actually set out to run a 24-mile long run. I was about 15 miles into that run when I felt a pop in my left knee. As it turned out, it was IT band syndrome, and it knocked me out. There was no way I was going to run that race. I had to go into convalescent mode. After 3 weeks of recovery, I realized that I was going to be able to run again, much to my relief. I started training towards the Charleston Marathon, which was supposed to take place on January 17th, 2015. I trained about 45 to 50 miles per week. My intention was to run my first marathon at 3 hours and 17 minutes, trying to sustain a 7-minute 30-second pace per mile. I ran the race in 3 hours, 26 minutes, and 37 seconds. I placed 62nd out of 907 entrants. I crossed the finish line so proud that I'd actually completed my first marathon, but my heart was broken that I'd missed a BQ by a mere 98 seconds. So I immediately went in search of another spring marathon for 2015, and I found the Tobacco Road Marathon in Cary, North Carolina. My training cycle for that marathon peaked at 50 miles per week. The race took place on Sunday, March 15th, 2015. My intention again was to run a 3:17. I finished the race in 3 hours, 16 minutes, and 53 seconds and qualified for Boston for the first time. I was really excited by the result and knew I wanted to run more marathons. So I started looking around for the possibilities for the coming fall. I signed up for the Peak to Creek Marathon in Jonas Ridge, North Carolina, which was to take place on October 24th, 2015. I took on an 18-week training cycle that peaked at 70 miles per week with the intention of getting as close to 3 hours flat as possible. I crossed the finish line after 3 hours, 3 minutes, and 37 seconds. I won my age group and once again qualified for Boston. My next marathon was the Myrtle Beach Marathon on March 5th, 2016. I went through a 12-week training cycle, maxing out again at 70 miles per week, hoping that maybe I could crack the 3-hour mark with that kind of training. I ran the race in 3:02:23, just missing the 3-hour mark, but I did again qualify for the Boston Marathon. I set my sights again on the Peak to Creek Marathon on October 29th, 2016, hoping that I'd be able to finally break the 3-hour mark. After an 18-week training cycle, which peaked out at 85 miles per week, I ended up running a 2:59:28. I'd finally broken the 3-hour mark. I was so happy. I also won the Masters Division for that race and once again qualified for the Boston Marathon. I returned again to the Peak to Creek Marathon on October 28th, 2017 with the intention of running another PR. I went through an 18-week training cycle that peaked out at 110 miles per week. I completed the race in 2 hours, 55 minutes, and 48 seconds. I again won the Masters Division for that race and qualified for Boston. In March 2018, I returned to the Myrtle Beach Marathon after a 12-week training cycle that peaked at 110 miles per week. I feel like I really beat myself up during this training cycle. I was just much too overtrained. I was just worn out physically and mentally. It was a cold and windy day, which really didn't help me out at all. I wasn't hitting my times as the miles ticked by, and by mile 11, an all too familiar nagging pain was coming up in my leg, and I knew I had to call it. I ended up not finishing that race, and I learned a big lesson about overtraining. My plan then was to return to the Peak to Creek Marathon on October 27, 2018, and I thought more training would get me to a new PR. So I took on an 18-week training cycle that peaked out at 120 miles per week. I got to the start line feeling kind of tired, and the wet and muddy conditions didn't really help. I ended up finishing the race in 2 hours, 57 minutes, and 46 seconds. Very disappointing considering the amount of training that I put into it, but I learned more lessons from that one as well. Namely, that running more miles in training does not directly relate to running better times in races. 2018 was turning out to be a very bad year for me for racing, but I decided I was going to try to redeem myself on December 8th of that year by running the Huntersville Half Marathon. This was another very hilly course, just like my first half marathon way back in late 2014, but I did end up PRing just barely. I ran it in 1:28 flat and finished the year with at least a mildly positive note. Feeling kind of burnt out from all of my marathon training over the last few years, I decided it might be fun to train and participate in some shorter races for the first time instead of just running halves and fulls. On March 2nd, 2019, I ran my first 10K, the Sprint into Spring in Troutman, North Carolina. I was running between 50 and 60 miles in the build-up to that race, and I ended up completing it in 38 minutes and 41 seconds. I came in second place, and I was really happy with it. 3 weeks later, on March 23rd, I ran my first 5K, the Lamb 5K in Mooresville, North Carolina. It was a fairly hilly course, but I ended up running it in 18 minutes and 36 seconds, exactly 6 minutes per mile. I came in second place, and I was really happy with the result. In June 2019, I began my 18-week training cycle towards the Peak to Creek Marathon once again. As part of that training cycle, I was supposed to run a half marathon tune-up race. So I found the Race 13.1 in Charlotte, North Carolina, which took place on September 21st, 2019. I really wanted to run a 1 hour and 25-minute time or better to prove that I was on track for my marathon goal. Even though there were a couple of major hills on that course, I knew it was mostly flat and it was a great opportunity to run for a new PR. I ended up running the race in 1 hour, 22 minutes, and 57 seconds. I was really happy. and it was a great indication that I'd reached the kind of fitness I needed to reach my goals in the upcoming marathon. On October 26, 2019, I returned to the Peak to Creek Marathon in Jonas Ridge. My 18-week training cycle peaked out at 110 miles per week, and my intention was to run a 2:51. I ended up finishing the race in 2 hours, 52 minutes, and 24 seconds. I was really happy. I'd set a new PR on less mileage and once again qualified for the Boston Marathon. My next race is the Tobacco Road Marathon on March 15th, 2020. I'm 2 weeks away right now, and my intention is to try to run a 2:49. I don't know if I can do it. This is a bit of an experiment because it's only a 12-week training cycle and my mileage peaks out at 80 miles per week. So we'll see what happens. Thanks everybody. That's it so far. Hopefully there's a lot more to come. Bye-bye. If you have anything to say about the content of this video, or if you'd like to share some of your own running experiences, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. And if you enjoyed things, please consider giving me a thumbs up and subscribing to the channel. Thanks. Bye.